Okay, I'm going to ask you to have a seat and adjust the microphone so you can speak into it. And then I'm going to ask you to state your name and then spell your name for the record, please.
Okay, so it's Justice Page, it's spelled Justis, and my last name is Page, Paige.
Thank you, sir. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Page, you're married to Brooke Page.
Yes, sir.
And how long have you been married?
Since October of 2021.
And how old are you now?
27.
Let me take you to July 19th of 2023. At that time, were you working?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Page, where were you working?
Simpson Strong-Tie.
Full-time?
Simpson Strong-Tie.
Okay. And were you working full-time there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you live here in Baker County?
Yes, sir.
Do you know a Rhonda Jewel?
Yes, sir.
Do you see her in the courtroom today?
Yes, sir.
Can you please point to her and identify what she's wearing?
She has on a black suit with a white shirt.
Your Honor, for the record, he's identified the defendant.
Your record will so reflect that.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Page, how do you know the defendant?
I knew her through my mother-in-law.
So have you known her for a few years?
Yes, sir.
Let me take you back to July 19th of 2023.
Up to this point, the prosecution has been laying a careful foundation. They aren't rushing into the tragedy. They're establishing who Justice Page is, his relationship to the defendant, and most importantly, introducing Ariya as a real child with a real life, not just a name in a court file. That's a common courtroom strategy because jurors need context before they hear the events that changed everything.
At that time, did you and your wife, Brooke Page, did you have any children?
Yes.
How many children did you have in July of 2023?
One child.
And was that a boy or girl?
Girl.
And what was her name?
Ariya Page.
And in July of 2023, how old was Ariya Page?
She was 10 months old.
And if you can briefly describe, at 10 months old, what was she able to do at that age?
She was sitting up on her own. She was pulling up on things just closely to the point where she was getting ready to walk. She was very energetic. She always had a big smile on her face. Anybody that didn't know her, she'd give them that Wednesday Addams look, see right through them. She loved just being outside, be with me in the yard, just anything just to keep going.
At that age, was she able to talk at all?
She could baby talk.
Baby talk. Okay. On July 19th of 2023, did you work on that day?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember what the hours were roughly?
8:30 to 5:30.
8:30 to 5:30. So would it be fair to say at 1 p.m. on that day, you were at work?
Yes, sir.
Did you receive a phone call
Yes,
on
sir.
that day in the afternoon?
Yes, sir.
And do you remember who you got the call from?
From my dad.
After you got the phone call from your dad, did he come to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what was the purpose of that?
He called me and told me to be ready. When he got to there, he was coming to pick me up.
This is the moment every parent dreads. Notice how the testimony shifts from factual questions to emotional impact. Prosecutors often do this intentionally, not to create sympathy alone, but to help jurors understand the human consequences behind the criminal charges. What do you think was going through Justice Page's mind during that drive to the hospital before he knew the full truth?
He wouldn't tell me why. It was probably about 15 minutes down the road when he told me that Ryan had been left in the vehicle for 5 hours, and still at that point I hadn't realized what was really going on, and it was when we got to the hospital that I realized that Ariya had passed away.
Who is your dad, Mr. Page?
Kevin Page,
Kevin Page. And what hospital did your dad take you to?
Ed Frazier's.
When you got to Ed Frazier's, was your wife, Brooke Page, there?
Yes, sir.
And other family members?
Yes, sir.
You remember if your mom, Pamela Page, was there?
Yes, sir. She was there.
What was going through your mind when you realized that Ariya had passed away?
That testimony is incredibly restrained, but sometimes restraint speaks louder than emotion. Rather than dramatic language, the witness simply describes what he saw. In court, simple first-hand observations can carry enormous weight because they're less likely to be viewed as exaggerated or influenced by emotion.
I couldn't really believe it, and I just couldn't. It took a while before it set in, and I just couldn't believe of how she passed away.
Do you remember when you first got there, what you first did when you got to the hospital?
Now the defense takes over, and this is an important shift. Their job isn't necessarily to argue that the tragedy didn't happen. They're testing the witness's personal knowledge and credibility. Listen closely to the questions. They're carefully separating what Justice Page personally witnessed from what he learned later. That distinction can be legally significant.
I was looking around and I asked, "Where's Ariya?" And my mom told me that she had passed away.
Were you ever allowed to go see Ariya?
Yes, sir.
And where was that at?
It's in a hospital room. She was laying in the bed.
And were other family members allowed in there with you?
Yes, sir.
One moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
Your Honor, that's all I have. I tender the witness. Thank you, Mr. Page.
Well, cross-examination?
One moment, Mr. Page. Mr. Nelson may have some questions for you.
Cross-examination?
Morning, Mr. Page. I'm so sorry for your loss. Normally speaking, you would be gone from the home when Rhonda Jewel picked up your daughter Ariya, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you don't have any personal knowledge of the events of that morning when Ariya was picked up? Personal knowledge. You weren't there.
No, I wasn't there. I had just left the house about 7:45.
I believe you've known Rhonda Jewel since about 2016.
Here's what the defense is trying to establish. Before this incident, Rhonda Jewel had earned the family's trust. If the parents believed she was a responsible caregiver based on years of experience, that background could influence how jurors evaluate intent, negligence, and the overall circumstances of the case. It's a subtle but important piece of the defense strategy.
You were 17. Does that sound accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think you said you knew her and her family through your mother-in-law.
Yes, sir.
That would be Monique Carter.
Yes, sir.
Okay. In that time that you knew Miss Jewel, you didn't have much contact with her. Is that accurate?
Not like that.
You didn't send her messages on Facebook. You didn't communicate with her by social media in any way, correct?
No, sir.
Okay. I believe you may have seen her at family functions of some kind.
Yes, sir.
She was at your wedding.
Yes, sir.
She was involved in the birth of your child. Is that correct? Okay.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Overruled.
You considered her a close family friend. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
You were aware that she has provided babysitting service for other people in the community, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you knew that she had watched Kaylee and Mike Rogers' daughters, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you had no reason whatsoever to think that she wouldn't provide excellent care for your daughter.
No.
Asterisk. And with just one follow-up question, the prosecution reframes the entire cross-examination. No matter how much trust existed beforehand, they're reminding the jury to focus on what happened on July 19th. In many negligence cases, prior good conduct doesn't erase responsibility for a single catastrophic failure. Do you think that final exchange strengthened the prosecution's case, or did the defense accomplish what it needed to? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.
Just can I have just a moment? Can I have just a moment? Mr. Page, you were aware that sometimes Rhonda Jewel would keep Ariya over at Stacy's house, correct?
Yes, sir.
You were also aware that she would sometimes keep your daughter at her home, that is Rhonda Jewel's home, correct?
I don't recall that.
Okay. Do you remember the Monday before this, isn't it accurate to say that Rhonda Jewel had Ariya but not at Stacy's house?
Correct.
Okay. Judge, I have nothing further.
Mr. Page, Mr. Nelson had mentioned a little while ago about the defendant providing excellent care,
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Would it be fair to say that the defendant did not provide excellent care to your daughter on July 19th?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions of this witness? Can he be excused, subject to recall?
Subject to recall, Your Honor.
Okay, sir. Mr. Page, if you'll step down, please.